Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, my dear brothers and sisters, my good followers. This is Get Hired First YouTube channel, a channel where you can click and get all the interview questions and answers. So today I'm going to help you on how to attempt this question in case hiring manager asks you, how do you conduct a risk assessment in a warehouse or a construction site? In a warehouse or a construction site. If an HR or HR asks you, he wants to know whether you can identify hazards, evaluate risks, put control in place, and verify that those controls are working. Here, a strong safety officer answer should be practical and step by step, not just a definition. Please, dear safety officers, in an interview, this is how you can attempt this kind of question. When conducting a risk assessment, I follow a systematic process. First, I understand the work activity and identify the hazards. Then, I determine who might be affected and how. After that, I assess the likelihood and severity of the risk, determine the risk level, and implement appropriate control measures using the hierarchy of control. Finally, I communicate the controls to the workers, monitor their effectiveness, and review the risk assessment whenever there is a change or after an incident. Then from there, you can explain each stage. Understand the work activity. First, you identify exactly what work is being performed, where it is being performed, who is performing it, and what equipment or materials are involved. For example, if you are a safety officer in a warehouse, you can assess in forklift operations. You can assess loading and unloading, manual handling, racking and storage, battery charging, working at height, vehicle movement, fire safety, and housekeeping. Then for you, safety officer at construction site, you can look at excavation, scaffolding, work at height, lifting operations, electrical work, hot work, concrete work, plant and machinery, confined spaces, temporary works. Then you can also explain like identifying hazards. Identifying hazards, you conduct a workplace you conduct a workplace inspection and identify anything that could cause injury, illness, property damage, or environmental harm. Through this one, we have to use these methods. You have to use physical site inspection, speaking with workers and supervisors, reviewing previous incident and near misses, checking equipment inspection records, reviewing method statement and JSA, checking permit to work, observing actual work practices, considering non-routine and emergency situations. For example, if I see a forklift operating close to pedestrians, the hazard is vehicle-pedestrian interaction. I identify who might be harmed and how. I determine who could be exposed to each hazard. These include employees, contractors, visitors, drivers, maintenance personnel, supervisors, new or inexperienced workers, vulnerable workers. For example, pedestrian could be struck by a moving forklift, resulting in a serious injury or fatality. Then from there, you assess the risk. You consider two main factors, likelihood and severity, which is the risk. Likelihood means how likely the incident is to happen. Then severity, how serious the incident could be. For example, likelihood, possible. Severity, it's major. Then when we move to risk level, that is high. You are then prioritize the hazards according to the company's approved risk matrix. Then you implement control measures. Once you determine the risk level, you introduce control according to the hierarchy of controls. The preferred order is elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and PPE. What is elimination? You remove the hazard completely. Then substitution, replace it with something less hazardous. Then when we move to engineering control, physically separate people from the hazard. Then administrative control, procedures, training, signs, scheduling, supervision, etc, etc. Then PPE, we have helmet, gloves, safety shoes, eye protection, harness, and the other PPE. For example, for the forklift and pedestrian risk, separate pedestrians and forklift routes. They should not move in the same line. Install physical barriers where applicable. Establish the designated crossing points. Then introduce speed limits. Use warning signs and alarms. Train forklift operators and pedestrians. Conduct regular supervision. Ensure appropriate PPE is worn at all times. You would not rely on only PPE when a stronger control are reasonably applicable. Then record the risk assessment. You document the findings clearly. Activity, hazard, who may be harmed, existing control, likelihood, severity, initial risking rating, additional control measures, responsible person, target completion date, residual risking rating, and review date. All these we have to document them. Then communicate to the control. A risk assessment is not useful if it strays in the office. It is not useful if it stays in the office. You should make sure the relevant workers understand the hazard and control through training, that is TBT, toolbox talk, safety inspection, moving around, training, method statement, JSA, briefings, safety meetings, signatures, and visual instructions. You also make sure workers have an opportunity to raise concerns because they often know practical hazards that may not be obvious during your formal assessment. If you talk to workers, they will give you full information about the dangers in workplace. Then you implement and monitor. After controls are introduced, you inspect the workplace to confirm that they are actually being followed. For example, if the risk assessment requires pedestrian barriers around forklift routes, you check whether the barriers are installed. You check if they are in good conditions. You check if workers are using the designated routes. You check if forklifts are following the traffic plan. You check if operators are complying with speed limits, not overspeeding. If controls are not effective, you take corrective action. Then you review and update the assessment. Risk assessment is not a one-time exercise. You knew it when it is a change in the workplace process, when new equipment is introduced, when new materials or chemicals are introduced, when or after an accident or near miss, when there is significant change in the site conditions, when existing controls are found to be ineffective, periodically according to a company requirements. Then for warehouse, forklift loading and unloading, that is task. I'm giving the example, warehouse example. Task, forklift loading and unloading. Hazard, forklift colliding with pedestrian. Possible consequences, serious injury or fatality. Initial risk is high. Control measures, separate pedestrians and vehicle routes. Install barriers, provide designated pedestrian crossings, maintain adequate lighting, implement speed limits, use trained and authorized forklift operators, conduct daily forklift inspections, maintain good housekeeping, provide warning signs and alarms, supervise the operation. Then you reassess the residual risk after implementing the control measures. For construction, for example, task, working at height. Hazard, work falling from an elevated platform. Possible consequences, injury, serious injury or fatality. Control measures: avoid work at height where reasonably practicable. Use suitable access equipment. Provide properly designated and inspected scaffolding. Install guardrails and not toy boards. Provide a safe access to egress. Use fall protection where required. Then ensure workers are trained and competent. Inspect equipment before use. Then establish rescue or emergency plan. Control falling objects and material below. Then you would then verify the controls through site inspections and review the risk assessment whenever conditions change. A strong closing statement for this interview. You as a security officer, you don't consider a risk assessment to be just a completing a form. Your objective is to identify hazards before an incident occurs, evaluate the risk, apply effective controls according to the hierarchy of controls, communicate those controls to the workers, and continuously monitor and review them. Then you eliminate goals, or the ultimate goal is to prevent injuries, occupational illness, property damage, and environmental incidents. This is a strong answer because it demonstrates practical safety knowledge, field experience, and the ability to manage risk from identification through monitoring and review. This is how you should answer this kind of question. How do you conduct risk assessment in warehouse or a construction site? Thank you so much for having Get Hired Fast YouTube channel. I love you.